Or emotional support friend. Yes. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So my name's Elvin.
Hi, Elvin. My name is Caitlin.
And you can share if you want.
Becca.
Caitlin and Becca. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So like I said today, we ask questions weighing or testing people's moral consistency, right? As well as power, oppression, and how they're interconnected. Can I ask you what comes to mind when you think about oppression or abuses of power? Anything that maybe like something relevant now that comes to mind, or something you faced in the past maybe that makes you think?
I think of like oppression as a group who fundamentally has less footing or foundation in the world versus somebody who may have a better foundation, whether that's by birthright or by what they've been given or handed to them. I kind of
some arbitrary trait.
Yeah.
And so so it's like oppression is like prolonged cruel treatment. And then like you have exploitation, which is like unfair use at the benefit of like yourself, for basically inherently ignoring the benefits or interests of somebody else.
I feel like exploitation also like comes with the acknowledgement of like, I'm an oppressor and I am using the oppressed.
Yeah. Right. And so actually in a lot of the cases we see exploitation is very noticeable. Like we know what's happening. But there are also cases, or would you agree, that of exploitation that go unseen or unnoticed, or sometimes people don't know they're being exploited.
100%.
Would you still say that's exploitation even then?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Okay. So I'm glad we agree. What we are going to, I'm going to switch the topic a little bit now, but they'll come together in the end.
Okay.
If you stay with me. It's a lot to kind of talk about, but so we have, the word animal. What comes to your mind when you hear the word animal?
I mean, I think of like a creature that isn't human.
Okay. And then what about you?
I think of my dog.
Your dog? That's good. That's perfect. I mean, like,
An animal.
Yeah. Are you aware that humans are animals?
Yes, we're mammals.
Yes. Right.
I think that there's a fundamental difference between humans and animals in that while we are both mammals, that there is some element of like spiritual or soul that humans are able to possess in which animals don't or can't.
Okay, yeah. I get that too. I definitely heard that before, like the soul aspect. How I see it is like that humans, they kind of have this ability, or more with that comes more responsibility, right?
Yeah.
To do better and maybe help other animals who don't have that.
I think that's the difference between instinct and morality.
Yes, exactly.
That's the key difference between humans and animals.
Yeah. And would you say that difference would justify any type of harm towards them, or lack of consideration? Like, would you say because of that instinct versus like they don't have like our terms
if
of
anything,
morality?
that means that we have more responsibility.
Right. Okay. Perfect.
We have the moral responsibility.
I agree 100%. Okay, so I want to ask, have you ever heard of veganism at all?
Like eating non-animals, only plants.
Yeah. Is it like, what would you say is like the definition? Like, I don't know if you've ever heard the actual definition, but a lot of people have some like
animal products.
Yeah.
We don't consume animal products.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, well, that's so that is just actually like a consequence of veganism. Veganism is commonly misrepresented as a diet, whereas we can actually kind of break it apart and see that it can't just be the diet, because vegans also don't go to zoos and they like don't support rodeos, right?
Yeah.
So veganism is actually going to be the ethical stance against the exploitation of all sentient beings. The evolution, or the definition is kind of evolving right now, because the original definition, people, and I try not to get stuck on original definitions, because it just shows that like we're kind of trying to be stuck in ways or whatever, and social justice movements are obviously always changing and evolving, because as people, like, that's all we do, or that we should be striving to do. So the original definition by Leslie Cross is going to say that no animal right exists for the use of humans, and that's just to say that in and of themselves they exist for themselves, right? And that's totally, like, I agree with that, although I take it even further to say like no sentient being, we're against the exploitation of all sentient beings, because even if it were like animals exploiting other animals, like I say we are animals, but then I'm just using it to like talk about like maybe wild animals.
Yeah, I was gonna say like there's a lot of wild animals that eat other
exactly
living things.
Yeah.
And so like,
and that's
we can
part
see
of
that
the circle of life.
like, and they're in a necessity situation, right? And so we're still against that, right? We wish that they didn't have to do that.
But do you think that that comes from a necessity situation, or that's just how they were like designed, and that's like she said, kind of the circle of life where
Well, yeah, I mean, I
other
think
animals
it's kind of both,
created
yeah.
yeah.
Well, because like humans, right? Like there was a point in time where we were getting predated upon, because and we were having to survive in that type of situation. And we view it as like a really good thing now that we're not in that. And so, like you said, like we have more responsibility. Like I would believe it's our responsibility to maybe help other animals escape that world too, that we can, maybe without having them have to depend on us like cats and dogs, typically do, because like they literally, it's in my mind, it's like it's still unfair for cats and dogs that they have to like really rely on us to feed them. Like, they don't get a choice of like what they eat, or where they go, or if they can go outside because they don't have the shot or not, or whatever. And so they've been kind of like domesticated in that way. And so we take care of them. But I guess like the goal would just to be like awarding them the lives that they're supposed to be able to live. Right. And so I guess I just want to ask, like, knowing now that veganism is not just a diet, right? Because you have vegetarianism, right? Just no animal byproducts, or no meat, right?
Yeah.
And then you have carnivore, which is like they only eat meat for some reason. I don't really see the benefits of that, but and then they have the flexitarian, or they have a plant-based diet. And so like a plant-based diet is just a consequence of what veganism can entail, because you're trying to exit the exploitation. Are you aware of any of like the exploitation that goes on currently, like with animal agriculture, the zoos and stuff like that?
Yeah. I'll be honest, sometimes it is hard, like going to a zoo, even with my kids, like from a learning and educational standpoint. Obviously there are parts that are great because they're able to learn about things in the wild. But at the same time, I look at a lot of like the animals, and they're just like pacing back and forth in their cages.
Yeah, psychosis.
And it's, I prefer to be able to take them somewhere like the San Diego Wild Animal Park, where there's a little bit more of like what it is in nature, and they have, that fundamental like freedom of what to live how they would in the wild. The difference being obviously like they're not all let out with each other, and the lions aren't eating the zebras,
right.
I also don't want my kids watching that in real time, but
I appreciate that, because it's not often that people like really even recognize that captivity in general is bad, right? But we know that there is some value to being able to observe these beings and learn from them, and maybe see how we can take care of them better, even by just observing them in their natural habitat.
And I think that that's like one of the big things that I've attempted to encourage and create in our family. I try to take our kids around the world. We do dives, we do snorkeling,
Nice.
and I think it's important for our kids, not just animals, but like other cultures and other countries. Like, how do other people live differently? How do they learn differently? Their habitats, or their all of those things, I think, are really important.
Exactly, because like meeting the world with curiosity is truly just like a biggest sign of intelligence, I feel, and it helps us learn and grow and like educate ourselves even more. So I guess I want to ask, is there anything that you think would be stopping you from going vegan? And again, I just want to restate, like, it's really not the plant-based diet part. That part comes after. It's just that mental switch of like seeing animals as individuals who are here for themselves, and maybe trying to just do your best to afford them that right in every day, and being conscious of it. Like, is there anything that maybe is an obstacle you see, or maybe you feel like maybe hard about that?
I think that there's a catch-22. Like, it's difficult, because I believe that with the moral responsibility of how we were created, in being able to care for the earth and care for the creatures in it, just like how the structure of the circle of life is, I feel like we're an integral part of that. If you just put us in the box of animals with other animals, I feel like there are systems in place that have been there since the beginning of time, and whether that's a lion eating a zebra, or whether that's me eating chicken, I think that those systems have been there forever. And while we can respect and honor those animals by not wasting or being kind to them, doing free range when it comes to eggs or chicken, making sure that your choices as far as meat are morally okay and not an exploitive process, I think that is very important. But I also see us living within that structure of how things have been.
Yeah, I get that too. I think one of the things that it brings me to is other other cultural norms, right, that we've like curated as a society, that we did for a really long time, but we're still not moral, or like we saw that weren't moral, but maybe like just there wasn't enough people who were able to speak up about the issue, or to make that change. Social justice movements, they take, I think it's like 3 or 4% of people, until like you just see like a exponential ramp up, like with slavery. People would say the same thing. They would say like, we've done this for so long, this is the way it's been. I guess the question we ask is, like, should we be accepting that? Like, should we allow that to stop us from curating a different world? As well as when we look at indigenous peoples, right? So like, my partner, like, that's people indigenous to this continent. I'm indigenous to like Polynesia, so like the islands. And what we've seen with our cultures, that when we look back far enough, we can see that they actually had lots of like plant-based foodways, and things like that weren't monoculture farming. It was like polyculture and food forests, and the part of like respecting the animal and using all of them came from the idea that we were all put here, and we don't own none of us own each other, right? It was before land became property, and like capital became super important. So we were just we would take lives when we had to, and then out of the respect for that life, we would then use every piece of them to try to honor that. What we're saying now is that the world has evolved to such a different point in time where we are out of that state of predation now, and we can safely say that for a lot of us. Unfortunately, there are still people who live in that sense of survival, and we're even saying like, they can still be vegan. They just have to, as long as they're acknowledging, what they're doing and the severity of the actions they're having to take to sustain themselves, then they're still vegan. They just are unfortunately not able to live on a 100% plant-based diet. And that's why I feel like the distinction is super important when we talk about veganism versus a plant-based diet, because it becomes a barrier. People think that just because they can't eat 100% plant-based, or because they did go to their dietitian and their dietitian said like, you actually should probably be using this or whatever, that they can't still change their mindset. But it's just.
Can I ask you what you believe sets an animal apart from a plant, since they're both living creatures?
I would say it's the central nervous system. So right, like when we step on grass, like we know that they don't feel. Okay, so let me put it in a situation like, if a pig or a fish or a cow runs into an obstacle, right, that's keeping them from, from thriving in life, we notice that the same as us, in same ways as us, that they avoid that harm, or they'll try to like solve a way around that harm. Like fish, unfortunately, we're testing on animals, and animal testing is a whole nother like nuanced, unfortunate thing. But they had actually seen that, when they had like one tank with irritant in it and one tank without it, and it had an antidote. And so like what we found was that even if there was more food in the irritant tank, they would always or they would swim to the irritant tank and then swim to the tank with the antidote to cool their systems down. And so what I mean by that is plants can't make preferences, like if this plant is
to negative feedback.
Oh yes.
And we can see a vine work its way around an obstacle. And
yes.
We also know that there are studies where if you take two plants that are exactly the same plant and you speak positively to that plant, and then you speak negatively to a different plant,
yes,
the same exact plants will grow differently. So there's definitely like, I see it as like, obviously, like I see animals having things that plants don't, but I also see humans having things that animals don't. And we are in this integral system of, and I don't want to say like, I wouldn't even call it levels, because we're all on the same playing field. We each have a role. It's like the human body. Not one sense is more important than another, but we each have a role in an ecosystem. And I think that it is just as important to realize your role and where you're at in that as it is to respect the other roles. Yes. If that makes sense.
Yes, I agree with that too. I want to say like I guess I'm meaning like the immediate ability in that aspect, right? Because like, say like if I walk up to a vine with a knife, and I'm going to cut the vine, it's not necessarily like writhing in pain or like trying to scream and get away from me.
So if a human is slower to respond, are they less human than a human who's quicker to respond?
No, but that's exactly.
See what rates life.
No, and that's exactly actually what the point I'm trying to make as well for the animals, right? People will typically say like, since animals can't think at the same rate cognitively, or people say that since pigs can't read, like they shouldn't deserve rights. And so I say, well, what do you say to about humans then who can't, read or whatever? Like, do they not deserve the same rights? And I think for me, it's all about affording that moral consideration where it matters, at least like at a base level. Like, we know these beings feel pain. What can we do to stop that? Because we know that we wouldn't want that to happen to us. And I do want to say, like, even in the instance of like if we are taking plant feelings into account and trying to reduce the harm on plant life as well, a plant-based diet would still be the best way to go about that, because right now, like, the animals we breed and grow for food, like, they have to eat plants too. Like, they're on plant-based diets. So we're growing food for them and for us to sustain our diets and theirs, just to get, because like the trophic pyramid, like, we only get 10% of the nutrients out of the animals that eat all of those plants. And so instead of just growing them and using all this farmland for food, we found that we could probably reduce our land use by 78%, just for food. And then, like, all of that land would be open up for sanctuaries and rewilding habitats and stuff like that. And at the same time, that plant harm would go down as well significantly, because we're growing less plants, we're eating less plants. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Any other further thoughts?
No, I think you said made all the points.
No points. Okay.
Okay. Would you be interested in a card with some resources on it? It just one side shows the Dominion, which is, do you want one too? I don't know. Okay. One part shows it's a Dominion. It's called Dominion. It's a documentary that shows just standard practice that happens. It's just the basic stuff of what needs to happen for animal agriculture to thrive. Unfortunately, it is pretty sad. But it just goes through each animal. Because I only recommend you to watch it if you just continue, or if you plan to continue to use any animals, just because it helps just stay informed as a consumer, and that's about it. And then the other side is a bunch of resources on, like, you could even ask questions about veganism, or how it came to be, or indigenous aspects on veganism, or spiritual aspects of it as well. Like, if you ever interested,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was
Thanks for a good moral
Kate?
conversation. Caitlin.
Yes, thank you.
Nice
Thank
to meet
you.
you.
Have a great day.
You too.